Hello and welcome to the New Arab Book Club. I'm Elias Jahshan and our guest today is Jeremy Corbyn, arguably one of the most prolific MPs in British Parliament. But Jeremy is not here today to talk about the ins and outs of Westminster politics, at least not specifically. Along with Neve and Shahd Hammouri, he's the co-author of the brand new book, The Gaza Tribunal, Britain's Complicity and Genocide. Published by Pluto Press and featuring an afterword by best-selling Irish author Sally Rooney. The Gaza Tribunal uncovers Britain's scale of complicity in Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. It brings together original testimony from health workers, journalists, human rights campaigners, international legal experts, and most importantly, Palestinian voices from Gaza and survivors from Gaza itself. The Gaza Tribunal is both an invaluable historical repository of evidence and an urgent call for its investigation. With that in mind, it's a pleasure to have Jeremy with us here today. Welcome to the New Arab Book Club.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure.
Now, Jeremy, I'm fully aware it's explained in the introduction of your book, but for many people who are watching or just coming across your book for the first time, and may not be aware, would you be able to give us a little bit of background and context as to how the book came about?
Sure. I've been, like you and thousands of others, very involved in the Palestinian cause for a very, very long time. And the horror story of everything since October 23 has deeply moved me. The bravery, the resilience and the fortitude of the Palestinian people and the lies and hypocrisy of the Western states in continuing to arm Israel throughout all of this. The book came about because a good friend who works with me, Oliver Durose, works as our media officer, but he's a very imaginative and very thoughtful guy. And he said, why don't you try and introduce a private member's bill into Parliament to do the equivalent of Sir John Chilcot's inquiry into the Iraq War, which took a long time to get, but I think was important because it exposed the dishonesty of Blair and the Blair government. And so we did that. We put in this private member's bill, got through its first stage, and then it was blocked, which I expected. And so we then said, OK, if Parliament won't agree to a public inquiry into supplying arms to Israel that have been used to bomb Gaza, then we'll do our own. So we set up a 2-day public inquiry at Church House in Westminster, which had thousands of people following it online. We had 29 expert witnesses over 2 days. Profoundly moving occasion, and it was a pleasure to work with Neve and Shahd on it. Wonderful people. Neve, Jewish intellectual, academic, lived and worked in Israel in the past, in the USA, and now at Queen Mary University in East London. Shahd, Palestinian woman, family in Jordan, University of Kent. Wonderful people, wonderful to work with them. I learnt so much from both of them. And then when we finished the tribunal, it did a lot of coverage on film, YouTube and so on. It's obviously still there. And Al Jazeera covered it quite extensively. And Matt Kennard did a film on it, which is still around. And that's an important one as well. But we felt we wanted to put something on the record. And so Oliver had the idea of doing a book. So we approached Pluto, who said immediately, yes, straight away. And then we put the book together, which is, yes, the verbatim account of the tribunal. And then it's got chapters from Neve, from Shahd and me, and then the afterword from Sally Rooney. And we did this because we think it needs to be on the record. On the record, the British government and the British Parliament, knowing what was going on, knowing the decisions of the ICJ, knowing the decisions of the ICC, carried on supplying arms to Israel and still do. And 73,000 people in Gaza have died. Goodness knows how many bodies are under that rubble. Think of this figure. There's 2 million people, give or take, in Gaza. There's 63 million tons of rubble.
Yeah.
Do the maths.
Yeah, it's awful.
There's more rubble than anything else.
Mm.
The only wealth that Gaza now has is rubble. And that is all done in real time on television.
So you described, talking about the tribunal, and you described the tribunal, although, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it has no formal judicial authority when you have the tribunal. What could a people's tribunal achieve that parliament or the courts or official inquiry systems can't achieve?
The parliamentary discussions on it have been very sanitised. And to begin with, in autumn 23, the number of MPs who would speak out for a ceasefire was very, very few. It's grown a bit since then because of the growth of the Palestinian marches. The parliamentary inquiries have pulled their punches in every direction and never really laid the blame directly on the ministers who authorised the sale of arms. We don't have judicial authority. No, we've not pretended to. What I do think is that we need a judge-led inquiry into the whole thing. And I know you have read the book, you will see in it the evidence from a Foreign Office official about the behaviour of ministers in trying to dumb down the reports. You'd have read the evidence of the surveillance flights that have been done, from Matt Kennard's evidence that was given. You'll have heard the evidence from Tayyab Ali and others on the breaches of international law, and you'll have heard or read the harrowing accounts by clinicians of trying to look after people without medicine or water. But this isn't a natural disaster. It's not a flood. It's not an earthquake. It's not a typhoon. It's all done human-made in human time. And those children dying of starvation in hospitals because there's literally no food to give them are within 5-10 kilometres of unlimited supplies of food, water, energy, medicines, and everything else. This is a human-made disaster designed to kill Palestinian people. It's disgusting.
So your book moves between legal analysis, political argument, and testimonies from a range of voices, including Palestinians. How did you ensure that the language of international law did not obscure the human experiences at the centre of all of this?
It's very difficult often to make the process of international law real. I've many times been to the UN human rights processes in Geneva, and you listen to the legal stuff and you can't necessarily follow it all, but you can follow the human evidence that's given. And if I give you a completely different example, I was in the High Court with the victims of the way in which the British treated the Mau Mau in Kenya in 1955-56, that period. And the judges were talking, the barristers were talking incredibly obscure aspects of international law. And the most powerful evidence was given by an old man who had been brutally treated by the British Army, who just in a very quiet, low voice described the brutality of his treatment at the hands of British soldiers. And you could literally have heard a pin drop in the court. Everyone was and that was the power of international law to get a position where that man, having had a lifetime of pain and hurt, actually got his day in court. So yes, this was not a judicial process. There needs to be one. That was the demand. My demand was that we have Chilcot Plus. So John Chilcot's inquiry was important because it did get a lot of evidence, and it is published evidence, and it's there for all time. But it wasn't the basis on which a prosecution could take place. That has to come. And so I want a judicial-led inquiry, and it'll be my first letter to Andy Burnham.
So I'll talk about Chilcot later on. But back to the tribunal itself, and you were talking about the experience of hearing evidence in international court. The example that you just gave. But with the tribunal itself, did you have a similar experience with that? Was there a testimony given during the tribunal that you were like, whoa, you know, was there something that really blew you away or moved you or made you really angry that you never expected?
I've been at hundreds of events to do with Palestine over the years and heard the pain and the testimony of so many people. And I've been in Gaza, in the West Bank and the refugee camps and so on. It's awful what you hear. But people sitting down in a room a bit like this and just giving their testimony straight to camera or straight to us was very powerful. Lots of it was very powerful. I thought the young man Abu Bakr was a very powerful evidence because he's not a lawyer. He's training to be a journalist. He's at the university in Dublin. He got a scholarship from the Irish government. Well done, the Irish government. And he used to be a footballer.
He's written for the New Arab a couple of times as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He's writing well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I so admired his evidence and what he'd been through. But I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying it. Excuse me. He has this sort of problem that he's not in Gaza, he's out. His family are there. And it's the survivor's guilt. And that is there all over for Palestinian people. I mean, you're from Palestine, I'm not, but so you know this better than me. But if you've lost all your family and you're the survivor, why me? Why am I alive? Why am I allowed to be alive? We need Darwish to come back and write poetry about it.
If only, yeah.
If only. And his poetry, and he died a long time ago, is still very powerful. And we produced a poetry book called Poetry for the Many, and we have his poem in Jerusalem, which I often read to events. And I say to people, just clear your mind, sit right back, and I'm going to read this very slowly, and imagine what Mahmoud Darwish is actually saying. And that's the voice of Palestine.
Rafat al-Ari is another voice of Palestine as well. Like in his poem, if the name escapes me, of course, but the kites and stuff is so moving, and it still resonates in today, so many years after he published it.
But isn't this all about the way in which the West have tried to obliterate Palestinian culture, history, art, music, and so on? And I keep going back to Edward Said, Orientalism. The Orientalism of the mind of Western academics, European, North American, and so on, that it's always about diminishing Palestinians. I remember the stuff that was said about Palestinians when I was a kid, 1950s and 1960s, that somehow or other, apparently Palestinians, having lived for millennia in Palestine, didn't know how to farm, didn't know how to grow things, didn't know how to do anything. Nonsense. Racist nonsense as well. It's all designed to diminish. And so I always say this at our Palestinian events. The cultural message is as important as the political one, because it ensures that the Palestinian people are treated with respect. And that is how it has to be done. And so the literature, the poetry, the music that's coming out of this period is going to last forever. And when we're long gone, 100 years' time, well, you might still be around. You look pretty fit.
I'll be long gone as well.
They're going to look back on this period and say, what were politicians doing, knowing that this was going on, and they still supplied the weapons, and they put profits out of arms ahead of Palestinian lives. And so those, I say to them in Parliament, you're going to be remembered, all of you. You're going to be remembered, okay, but not for any good reason.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So regarding the Chilcot style inquiry that you want to do, and the bill, the private members bill, I believe you just recently
we've reintroduced it.
Yeah.
We've tabled it as soon as the new session started, because there isn't normally provision of a carryover of private members bills. So We reintroduced it, and it is theoretically coming up for debate on September the 11th.
Okay.
I think it will be blocked and won't actually get debated on September the 11th, but we will reprint and reproduce the bill. It will be broadly similar to the one that we had before, and we'll use that as a campaigning tool. And I will just keep on raising the issue in Parliament about the need for the inquiry. And so we're not going to give up on it. It won't solve everything. An inquiry won't solve everything. But you've got to use whatever tools you have. And the point I also make is that for all the wonderful people that march and demonstrate about Palestine, in reality, what can we do? We can show sympathy and solidarity, of course, but we've actually got to do things politically here in Britain. And that's why my focus is entirely on the breaches of international law by Britain that pretends it always follows international law, and by the commercial relationship of the UK government with the arms industry.
And who do you think specifically should be investigated?
The ministers who made decisions, excuse me, the ministers who made decisions both in the Foreign Office and in the Prime Minister's office, the role of the arms industry in Britain, and the role of those that lobby for the arms industry in Britain, because we're now into a historically bad period in international politics and history. Just to digress slightly, we have a world that has an environmental problem, obviously. Pollution, biodiversity loss, global warming, unusual weather patterns, and so on. We have a world of massive human inequality at a greater level than has ever existed in my lifetime. A quarter of the world's population of food shortage, if not starving. And we have a massive level of human inequality. And in this country, 150 billionaires own almost a quarter of the wealth of the whole country. Every government department in Britain is cutting spending. Social services, social security, housing, you name it, it's been cut, except defence. Defence is going to go up. The government now claims if you add everything together, it's reached 4%, it'll go up to 5% of national income. That's happening all over the world. China, Russia, India, Europe, USA. And there are 70 million refugees in the world, victims of war and human rights abuse and environmental degradation. What a historically crazy period. And when I asked the Foreign Secretary last week, I said, when she was reporting on the NATO summit, I said, was there a moment at any time during the NATO summit you actually discussed the issues of the growing militarism and war all around the world, and what are you doing to bring about peace? And she said, we have to arm ourselves to ensure there is peace. Just think about that.
I don't need to think about that. That's just
maybe you don't need to. Yeah,
it just sounds absurd. Like that you have to do that. Like, what about the inequality that you mentioned? You know, and also like,
so every school that loses a teaching assistant,
exactly, yeah,
every hospital that doesn't have a porter to take the person from one operating theatre to another, every doctor that's not employed, all that is because of the money we're pouring into the arms industry.
And all that money could go towards helping to reconstruct Gaza at some point. And that in Gaza itself is also an environmental problem issue as well.
Well, in Gaza?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember I've been in Gaza quite a few times. The aquifer under Gaza ought to be the provider of the water for Gaza. It can't be. Why? Because the sewage and the other pollution that's leached through into the aquifer means the aquifer is now polluted. So the only source of water is desalination or importing water from the West Bank or from Israel, neither of which happens. Israel knowingly bombed the desalination plants, knowing that the people, including the children of Gaza, will drink polluted water, poisonous water. So all the digestive conditions that will come from polluted water. It's
one of many war crimes that's been committed.
There are many, many war crimes. It's a clear war crime to deny people water.
100%, yeah. So you spent decades, like you said before, you've spent decades campaigning for Palestinian rights and Palestinian solidarity. In your view, what do you think has changed since October 2023?
October 23 was dramatic by any stretch of the imagination, obviously. And then some people sort of thought, why? They thought, people that hadn't been very involved thought, why has this happened? And then the more thoughtful began to consider, well, actually, if you imprison the population of Gaza in the Strip, which is what's happened, deny them access and so on and right to travel, then what you're doing is corralling a super educated, very intelligent, very well-informed population into a horror story of poverty and dependence on international aid to survive. And then Israel's constant, not random, but highly targeted bombing. And then you've now seen, actually, the experimentation on the Palestinian people. The drones, the surveillance done by Britain, the targeting, to some extent, of original bombing to destroy schools and hospitals and roads and so on, and then the carpet bombing of places, and then the development of surveillance systems that Israel probably knows the identity of every single person in Palestine because of their surveillance systems. And the company Palantir, who operate within and for the IDF, are now being recruited to run our National Health Service information systems, our Department of Social Security, DWP, Department of Work and Pensions systems. So the war experiment in Gaza is going to be repeated all around the world. If you and I were allowed to, we could go to an arms fair this autumn, and I bet my bottom dollar there'll be videos showing how effective these drones are in killing people in Gaza. It's all a war crime, the whole thing. And then those of us like you and me who are on the marches, we're accused of all kinds of horrible things. We're absolutely not. Those marches, as you know, are a march of unity, of people of quite divergent political opinions, and from all parts of the country and all faiths and religions. And somebody worked out, and I think it's true, the most likely demographic to be on the march are actually British Jews. Those people that come in the Jewish bloc, they're there, and they're absolutely welcome there. And there's never been the slightest bit of disagreement or trouble whatsoever. They're the ones who get even more abuse than you and me just for being there.
Not just the Jewish bloc, but also the Orthodox Jews you see holding the big signs, and they just stand there and people walk past taking selfies with them.
I know those guys very well.
They're amazing.
They all come from next to my constituency.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to them once, I said, well, great you're being here. They said, oh, it's very tiring. I said, oh, how's that? They said, well, we're not allowed to use wheeled vehicles on the Sabbath, so we have to walk. So if we form up in central London, they walk from Stamford Hill to central London.
Amazing. That's
that's
a long walk.
Wonderful guys.
Yeah.
And the others that are great, like Rabbi Gluck, wonderful man. He, whenever there's been any threat or whatever to the mosques in my area, he lives in the neighbouring constituency, Finsbury Park Mosque. The first person there is Rabbi Gluck.
And the solidarity from the Jewish community is
and he must get a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
Lovely guy.
Yeah. So just a few more questions. After readers finish your book, what do you want them to do with the findings? Is there like an ultimate purpose for putting this book in the hands of readers?
Yes, this book is the basis on which a lot of prosecution can take place. The evidence is there. It was taken in proper conditions, properly recorded, and it's video evidence as well to follow. All those testaments can be used. And I worked with and support South Africa on the application they made to the ICJ South Africa invited me to attend the ICJ to observe the hearing, which I did. It was traumatic. And I went on a speaking tour in South Africa with Dr. Barghouti last year. And we talked to a lot of people. But one meeting really stood out for me. We were doing a big rally in Cape Town towards the end of our tour. We did a lot of travelling around South Africa. It's a big place, you know. Long journeys. Wow. Hours in cars. Anyhow, so we did this big rally in Cape Town. And we all spoke. There was a lot of other speakers as well. And then there was an old gentleman sitting at the front. He then put his hand up to say something. And he'd been absolutely part of the anti-apartheid struggle. I think he'd been in prison under apartheid and so on. And he described all of that. And then he said this. He said, the Palestinian people are treated far worse than we were under apartheid. He said, yes, there were executions. Yes, people were shot. Yes, people were killed. But the scale of it for Palestinians, we didn't have carpet bombing. We didn't have bombing of schools. We didn't have destruction of hospitals. You've got all of that. And so South Africa, with all its problems and thrown off the yoke of apartheid, took the case to the ICJ. Absolutely well done, South Africa. What's their reward? Tariffs. Trade tariffs from the USA for speaking up for the Palestinian people. I went to Namibia as well. Basically, it's a small country, and they joined in as one of the co-applicants to the ICJ along with South Africa. I just went there to thank them, And they then took me to their National Museum of the genocide against the indigenous people of what is now Namibia by the German forces at the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah, not many people know about that.
Not many know about it. And have you been to Windhoek?
No, I haven't. No.
If you get a chance, go there. It's the most moving museum I've been in many ways. It describes in great detail the systematic destruction of people by taking out the prominent people, the leaders in the community, and then wholesale killing of so many more. It's just one of the great crimes of history.
Yeah,
and it seems that Nazi methods were tried out first in Namibia. It was then called Southwest Africa.
Yeah.
And it was a German colony until the Mandate period of 1920, 21.
So speaking of South Africa, though, it just made me think, because of the way South Africa was punished for bringing the case to the ICJ, it made me wonder, like, does this show that international law doesn't really put everyone on an equal playing ground? Does it show the weakness of international law in some place, or the international courts? Or
it shows both, actually. It shows the strength of international law in that the perpetrators of these crimes, Israel, USA, Britain, all busy condemning the process. And I remember the various MPs from all parties getting up in Parliament when South Africa first made the application under the Genocide Convention, saying it was wholly inappropriate. How could Israel possibly be accused of genocide because of what happened to the Jewish people under the Nazis? Obviously, the Holocaust was evil and vile and a disgraceful period of history in any stretch of any imagination. Does that mean that Israel is not capable of committing genocide? No. It means the truth has to be told. And so the strength of international law is that it gets there, that you get that opinion, you get that view by an international group of judges, 13 judges. The weakness is, how do you enforce it? Now, there are points in history where you could say international law has worked. It's worked in the sense that independence happened for East Timor, for example. It worked in the sense that Milosevic and others were eventually put behind bars for the Srebrenica massacre and so on. Yes, but the weakness is that when it comes up against the big powers, it doesn't work. And the International Criminal Court for a long time looked like victor's justice, in the sense that it was only African heads of state that were ever taken there. It didn't apply to anybody else. And I want the international court system to work against Western leaders as well. And that includes the USA and Britain and France and so on. How does one enforce international law? Well, if you don't have a international military operation to enforce, and we don't have and not like to have, like a UN force or something, then it can only be done by the compliance of the countries concerned and the understanding and support of the population as a whole. So international law is a step forward, is an important step forward, gives you the basis of human rights, basis of right to organise, basis of right to life, but it's essentially only the court of public opinion that can enforce it, and that is what we're trying to do. So all those millions that have marched all over the world, thank you, because you are part of international law enforcement.
So your book is very UK-centric in that it targets and focuses on British complicity and British politics in the Gaza genocide. So for readers in the US or Australia or Ireland or even Canada, if they pick up the book and they read it, what could they take away from it and to apply in their local context?
I hope they do take the book away, and I hope they do understand that it was done in London. It was done specifically aimed at the British political system and British commercial operation. And so it wasn't designed to leave people out. It was designed to focus on what I believe is my job, our job, which is to try and bring about political change in Britain. You could do similar tribunals in other countries. You could use this, if you wish, as a template, or we could happily take part in organising similar kinds of tribunals with other evidence and other witness statements taken. And if other countries or good people in other countries want to do that, then the book is there for them. The book was an enormous amount of effort put in, and I'm very proud of the work that we've achieved. I recognise its limitations in the sense that had we wanted to, we could have run the tribunal for weeks. We had 29 expert witnesses, and I'm very grateful to all of them because it was very traumatic for them to give evidence. But they did, and that's important. We could have gone on for weeks with lots of other evidence. And if there is an appetite for a renewal of the tribunal or a more internationally based tribunal like the Russell Tribunal on Vietnam, then I'd be happy to do that. Maybe what you've just said is spark some ideas of an international tribunal on Gaza, so we can all contribute and examine the role of Raytheon, of Lockheed Martin, of British Aerospace, of Elbit Systems, and so on, in the supply of weapons. So we're not done yet, and we'll never be done until the Palestinian people are able to live in peace and freedom.
Well, as we say in Arabic, inshallah. So hopefully that does happen in our lifetime as well. Just a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. I wanted to ask you about Sally Rooney because she's one of my favourite authors. So why was it important to have someone like her to write the afterword?
Sally Rooney is a wonderful writer, and she's also a wonderfully modest woman. I was in Amsterdam for a meeting of the Hague Convention over this enormous table in a church. It was a big set of tables, about 100 of us sitting around a table. And after we'd finished one session, she comes up to me, says, "I want to shake your hand. I'm Sally from Ireland." And so I said, well, we're doing the Gaza Tribunal. I said, would you be interested? So we then approached her, and she very kindly wrote that because we wanted that voice, the writer's voice, the novelist's voice, the humanitarian voice, because as we were discussing a few minutes ago in our talk here, it is about the voice of culture, it is about the voice of imagination. And the poetry that's now coming out of Gaza and the West Bank is amazing. Poetry written under struggle stands the test of time. And so I want to say a big thank you to Sally Rooney for writing that section of the book. It meant an awful lot to us, and it means an awful lot to people that are reading it. But she is so self-effacing and so modest in her section right at the end. It's the last bit of the book. She ends up, and I'll just, if I may, just quote this little bit of it. Where is it? Come on. I'm going to find it, don't worry. This is from Sally. In a letter essay written during his extended imprisonment, the novelist Walid Dakar invoked the idea of parallel time to describe the experience of Palestinian prisoners. We in parallel time see you, while you all do not see us. We are a past continuous and never-ending. We address you all from it presently, so that it does not become your future. Now, isn't it wonderful that Sally, in her own beautifully written chapter, should actually end up quoting somebody else? That's her.
And
well,
really
thank you, Sally, and well done.
Yeah, and she quoted a very important figure in Palestinian literature and the freedom movement as well. So, yeah. Look, that just about covers everything I'm after. Is there anything else you would like to add, or perhaps you have some famous last words you want to add?
Thanks. And anyone watching this, thanks for watching and listening. And the book is available. It's published by the Peace and Justice Project, which is the ones that hosted and set up the tribunal. We founded the Peace and Justice Project after I stepped down as leader of the Labour Party. It's there to give voice to people. It's there to give voice to the voiceless, to give a home to the politically homeless, and that's what we exist for. And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing and have done, and hopefully we're going to carry on doing that for a long time to come. And please have a look at the book. And when we study history, when we study culture, when we study literature, we begin to understand the nature of struggle. It's not all bald facts, it's not all legal opinions, it's about the humanity of people. And thank you to wonderful Palestinian people for all they've endured and the contribution they've made to our world.
And as you said with the history, like it didn't start October 2023, it didn't start 1967, 1948. It could probably go back as probably even before the Balfour Declaration.
Oh, well before. You can look at settlement issues from about 1860 onwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Roughly speaking, around 1860 onwards, and reading that kind of history.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Joe.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Cool, no worries. We'll see you guys at the next book club event.
Shake hands.